August 17, 1943. Dawn breaks over Doadura airfield in New Guinea. The jungle is thick, the air heavy with humidity, and the sound of engines warming up. Under the left wing of a P-38 Lightning, Technical Sergeant James McKenna crouches, his hands black with grease, his eyes fixed on a young pilot climbing into the cockpit. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, 23 years old, 6 missions, 0 kills. Today's patrol will take him straight into Japanese airspace. Intelligence reports say 18 Mitsubishi Zeros are waiting. 18 of the best pilots the Imperial Navy can send. And McKenna knows most of those young men taking off this morning won't come back. The P-38 Lightning was an engineering marvel. Twin engines, twin booms, a 20mm cannon and 450 caliber machine guns in the nose. Fast, powerful, deadly, on paper. But in the skies over New Guinea it had a problem. A fatal one. It couldn't turn with a Zero. The Zero was lighter, more agile. In a turning fight, the P-38 might as well have been a flying truck. Japanese pilots knew it. They used it. They'd bait the Americans into a turn, cut inside the radius, and shoot them down before they could react. The manuals were clear. Never turn with a Zero. Use altitude, use speed, dive, fire, climb away. But out there, in the chaos of a dogfight, no manual survives contact with reality. McKenna had been maintaining P-38s for 8 months. He knew every bolt, every cable, every sound those machines made. He'd watched too many pilots die in planes that were within factory specifications. Perfect on paper, lethal in combat, to the men flying them. The problem wasn't skill, it wasn't courage, it wasn't doctrine, it was delay. When a P-38 pilot yanked the control stick, there was a moment, a fraction of a second. Before the ailerons responded, that delay came from slack in the control cables, just 3/8 of an inch of play. It didn't sound like much. But in a turning fight measured in milliseconds, it was the difference between life and death. McKenna could feel it in his hands. When he pulled on those cables during maintenance, they felt loose, soft, wrong. The manuals said it was fine. Factory tolerances allowed it. But McKenna knew within spec didn't mean good enough. He told the engineering officer 2 months earlier. The answer was the same as always. The tension's within limits, Sergeant. Changing it would void the warranty. No field mechanic has authorization to modify flight controls. But rules don't mean much when you're the one watching pilots die. The night before the mission, August 16th, McKenna stayed late in the hangar. Most of the crew had gone to sleep. The jungle was alive with insects, and the faint hum of distant generators echoed through the warm air. McKenna stood beside Hayes's P-38, the metal still warm from the sun. He opened the access panel on the left boom and stared at the cable system that had killed more pilots than enemy fire. He grabbed the cable with both hands, pulled, felt the slack. That was it, the hesitation between command and response, the heartbeat of delay that doomed good men. He couldn't stand it anymore. From his tool bag, he took a 6-inch piece of piano wire, salvaged from a wrecked Lightning 2 weeks earlier. It was strong, springy, perfect for what he had in mind. He sat on the concrete floor, a pair of pliers in one hand, the wire in the other. He bent it into a Z shape. The wire fought him, sharp, stiff, unforgiving. His hand slipped, once, twice. He cut his thumb, blood mixing with grease on his coveralls. 8 minutes later, he held something simple. A handmade tensioner. No diagrams, no blueprints, just instinct. He wedged himself into the cramped space inside the boom, disconnected the cable, and installed the tensioner inline between the pulley and control arm. When it finally seated, he pulled the cable again. No slack. Perfect. The ailerons moved instantly. No lag, no hesitation. McKenna reattached the inspection panel, cleaned the blood off his hands, and walked out into the warm tropical night. He knew what he'd done could get him court-martialed. Dishonorable discharge, maybe prison. But if it worked, maybe Hayes would live. Morning came fast. At 6:30, McKenna stood on the flight line as the crews fueled and armed the planes. Hayes walked over, his face calm, but his eyes hollow with exhaustion. "You do anything different?" he asked. McKenna hesitated, then nodded. "Just tightened her up a little." Hayes smiled weakly, climbed into the cockpit, and started the engines. The propellers roared to life. Two massive Allison V-1710s thundered through the morning air. At 7:42 a.m., Hayes rolled down the runway and took off, his P-38 climbing into the bright Pacific sky. McKenna watched until it was just a glint on the horizon. Then he waited. The radio reports started coming in at 8:14. Contact with enemy aircraft over the Huon Gulf. Altitude 13,000 feet. Multiple bogies. McKenna stood frozen. Every few seconds, the static crackled with fragments of transmission. Gunfire, call signs, then silence. 17 minutes later, it was over. At 9:03, Hayes's P-38 came back into view, trailing smoke but flying steady. He landed hard, taxied in, cut the engines, and climbed out. His hands were shaking, his flight suit soaked in sweat. He walked straight to McKenna. 2 words. It worked. Hayes had shot down 3 Zeros in 7 minutes. The first in a diving pass, the second in a turning fight, the third in a scissors maneuver that no P-38 had ever been able to pull off before. He said the plane felt alive. Every movement was instant. No lag, no hesitation, just pure control. Captain Frank Mitchell, flight leader of the 475th Fighter Group, had seen it all from 15,000 feet. He couldn't believe what he was watching. Hayes's lightning rolled faster than any he'd ever seen. It wasn't pilot skill, it was something mechanical. After landing, Mitchell went straight to McKenna. "What did you do to that airplane?" McKenna told him. "The piano wire, the unauthorized modification." Mitchell didn't hesitate. "Do mine next." That night, McKenna did, and the next morning, Mitchell flew into combat and came back grinning. Word spread. Mechanics started copying the modification. They cut pieces of piano wire, bent them into Z-shapes, and quietly installed them on their pilot's aircraft. By August 20th, 9 P-38s at WWII had the mod. By early September, more than 40 across New Guinea. No paperwork, no orders, just a whisper among the crews. Ask McKenna about the cable fix. The results were undeniable. In July, P-38s were losing 2 planes for every Zero they shot down. By September, the ratio was nearly even. And by October, the Lightning had become a killer. The Japanese noticed first. Reports from the 11th Air Fleet described new American aircraft that rolled faster, reversed more quickly, and broke out of turns with impossible timing. Veteran pilots like Saburo Sakai, Japan's ace of aces, found themselves suddenly on the defensive. In one fight over Wewak, Sakai tried his usual tactic: bait the P-38 into a turn, reverse, and cut inside. Except this time, the Lightning reversed with him, perfectly in sync. For a heartbeat, they nearly collided. Sakai barely escaped. He returned to base, shaken. He told his squadron, "The Americans have changed something." But nobody knew what. The secret was hidden inside the booms, a 6-inch piece of piano wire. By mid-September, Japanese losses soared. 38 fighters down in 3 weeks. American losses, 22. For the first time in the Pacific, Zeros were ordered to avoid P-38s unless they had superior numbers. The hunter had become the hunted, and all because one mechanic refused to accept within spec. In October, a maintenance inspector finally discovered the unauthorized modification. He filed a report. The paper trail climbed the chain of command, reaching Lockheed's engineering office in California. 3 weeks later, Lockheed engineers arrived in New Guinea to investigate. They examined McKenna's tensioner, measured the load, ran flight tests. Their conclusion: it worked, it was safe, it improved control response, and it should have been part of the original design. Lockheed quietly incorporated a similar system into the new P-38J model, which entered production that December. But McKenna never got credit, no medal, no commendation, not even a mention in the reports. Official documents listed the improvement as an engineering refinement. His name didn't appear anywhere. Hayes survived the war, flew 63 missions, scored 11 kills. He went home to Iowa, married his high school sweetheart, raised 4 kids, and every August 17th, he called McKenna to say thank you. Captain Mitchell made it home too. He stayed in the Air Force, retired as a colonel in 1963. He told every young officer the same story. Never ignore the mechanic who knows the machine better than the manual. James McKenna left the service in 1946, opened a garage in Long Beach, California, worked on cars for 40 years, never told the story. When he passed away in 2006, his obituary said only, World War II veteran, aircraft mechanic. No mention of the piano wire, no mention of how he changed the war. But inside that old garage, on a wall faded by time and oil, there's a single photograph. A young man in coveralls standing beside a P-38 Lightning. The words scrawled on the back read, August 1943, New Guinea. That's James McKenna, the mechanic who refused to wait for permission and saved the lives of men who might have otherwise never come home. Innovation doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it comes from the ground crews, the grease-stained hands, the quiet problem solvers, the ones who see the flaw, find the fix, and do what needs to be done, no matter what the rulebook says. If you found this story as powerful as we did, take a moment to like the video, subscribe for more untold stories from history, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. From veterans to history lovers, from Texas to Tasmania. You're part of a community that remembers. Every story matters. Every name deserves to be remembered. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping their story.